So first I'd like to welcome everyone to the 4th annual Haunted History Walking Tour. This is the 4th year that Old Town Pocatello has worked with the Southeast Idaho Paranormal Organization, and you'll meet all, or most of their members are here in this group today, and they'll host the buildings as we go along. I'm Stephanie Pelagi, and I'm the Executive Director of Old Town Pocatello, and I'll be your tour guide. So I will walk you between the buildings, and the Southeast Idaho Paranormal folks will take you down into some of the buildings, or up into some of the buildings. The second thing I'd like to say is we don't use props on any of our tours. What you see, feel, or experience is what's happening in the buildings. We have had instances of occurrences and activity in all of the buildings during the tours over the last 2 weekends. And the SPIRO folks will tell you about that in more detail. So before we have kids running, making it very difficult for us to hear, I'm going to turn the time over to Lisa, and she's going to be your host here in this building. Lisa.
Thank you. So I'm Lisa. I've been doing this for almost 6 years now. My favorite part of it is doing the history and getting to see some of the buildings and going into places that you normally don't get to go into. That's my favorite part. I started doing that, and then little by little I got encouraged to come on some of the investigations, and it kind of grows on you a little bit. So that's why I do what I do. I love getting into it, and that's why we love bringing the tour to you as well, so you can come in and see some of the things that we get to experience and see some of the places that we get to see. So that's partially why we do what we do. We're actually going to go down the stairs now and around the corner and start our tour. John likes to affectionately call the crematorium. It's not really a crematorium, it's actually the original boiler. It was built here in 1915. Cremation actually started around the Stone Age. There's lots of different reasons for cremation to be taking place. Some of it was religious, some of it could have been disease, different things like that happening. It started in North America in 1875 with the Cremation Society. That's when it started as what we know today as cremation. About 25%, a little higher, but around 25% of all deaths now, they choose to be cremated. So that's kind of an interesting thing. Anybody know what the most notorious cremation story is? Yep, World War II. And not only was that a horrible situation, but it was also horrible for the people because they believed that when you died, your spirit didn't know that you were deceased yet. And so they could actually, your spirit felt everything that was happening. So your soul felt the fire, felt everything happening. And so that was a really horrible experience for them. There's been other stories along the years about different types of things. There was one famous one around the 2000s in Georgia. Does anybody remember that story? There was a crematorium that the furnace wasn't working any longer, and so they were sending bodies, but they decided to take them out, and so they were burying them out in the woods behind it. Within a little bit, they pretty much were just kind of opened the back door and out they were going. They were just laying on the top of the ground. By the time they figured out what was happening, there was 335 bodies out in the back within the crematorium. A lot of times people ask us, does something violent have to happen in a place for it to be what we might consider haunted? Absolutely not. A lot of times when we do histories of buildings or we're doing research, we find nothing violent has happened in that building itself. There could be lots of different reasons for something to tie itself to a building. It could be a protecting force. It could be something that they love and they are tied to that because of that. It also could be an object. We have lots of stories of objects being what they're tied to, perhaps like a music box or a jewelry box, and when that item is moved from building to building or house to house, then whatever is tied to that will also move along with that. So those are all kind of interesting things to think about. Don always likes me to point out this goose hanging here to let you know he's not hanging geese. What that represents is if you couldn't find a young man to go down your chimney to clean your chimney, they would actually tie a rope around a goose, send it down the chimney, it would flap its wings, clean your chimney. So the dirtier the goose, the cleaner your chimney. Kind of an interesting interesting fact. If you do come back, there is a chimney you can climb inside and just see how small it really is. So it's kind of a creepy feeling. Don shut me in there, so don't let him shut you. We're actually going to turn around and go back up the stairs and continue our tour. Okay, so you're actually standing in the spot where we had a lot of activity on the night that we had our investigation. We had a lot of strange noises that we couldn't explain, but their biggest one that continually was happening throughout the night was smell. There was kind of a sweet smell that kept coming up right here, and we could never figure out where it was coming from. We actually stopped, walked around, smelled vacuum, soaps, whatever we could find in this area, trying to figure out what the smell was coming from. It was so strong, it would come up and it would make your eyes water, and then it would be completely gone and you couldn't smell it anymore. On the night that we did our investigation, Don was actually here in the building, so we went over to his office, said, Don, can you come over? He came over, the smell came, we were trying to find it, he couldn't figure out where it came from either. So it's kind of an interesting thing. As we were walking up and down this corridor, the smell would travel with us, and so it would kind of attach to someone. We could smell it all the way to the end. When we turned around, the smell would travel back with us. So it was kind of an interesting experience. We've actually had it happen twice now on the tour, so take a smell as we walk along here and see if you can smell it. When we get down and around the corner, we're actually going to be going up the stairs to the 5th floor. If you feel like you can't do that, there is an elevator right there, so please push number 5. Now, the night that we did our investigation, this is actually where we had a lot of activity. Some of the things that were happening, we were measuring with our K2 meter. That's the meter that I'm holding here in my hand. What this meter does is measure electrical forces in the area. How we use this, we set it somewhere away from where it would be having any kind of electrical force, and we ask questions. We ask yes, no kinds of questions, hoping to get a response. Things like, are you female? And then we'll wait to see if there's a response. Are you male? Again, wait. If we start getting what we call hits on our K2, which means the meter starts going up or down or lights are flickering, then we'll continue asking questions, hoping to get some type of response that we can document and perhaps answer questions about what might be in this area. Now, interesting thing was happening the night that we were using this. Over here in this corner, we were getting a lot of responses or hits on our K2 meter. Now, it was just myself and another female investigator, and an interesting thing that we found over the years is that a lot of things happen very gender-based. And so we'll send a group of females together or a group of males together, and then we'll kind of separate and do a mixed group to see if there's any kind of responses. Well, we decided to see if they would have the same kind of thing happen to them. So we left, we didn't tell them what had happened. We said, why don't you guys go up to the 5th floor, see if something happens to you. We usually investigate about 30 or 40 minutes and then kind of come back and separate out again. And they came back down and they said, oh my goodness, we were having all kinds of K2 hits and all this kind of things was happening. And so it was kind of an interesting thing. Now, something to know about this floor is that there is no electricity on this floor except for in this little door right here. It's not wired yet, so there is no electricity on this floor yet. So that's kind of interesting to think about. Another thing that was happening is right over here, we were talking, myself and another investigator, and something went between us. A white flash of something. Now it's really dark up here because there is no lights, and a lot of times when we're doing our investigations, we turn off our flashlights, so it's very dark up here. But we visibly saw the white thing go between us. So we turned on flashlights, thinking maybe something had blown between us, trying to figure out what it was, but we could never find anything on the floor that would explain what it was that had gone in between us. Another thing that kept happening is as we were standing here, we kept getting really, really cold spots. As that would happen, our equipment would malfunction. It would completely turn off. It kept happening so often that we thought, well, maybe it is the equipment that is malfunctioning. So we actually ended up going, changing batteries, getting new equipment, coming back on the floor, and repeatedly it kept happening. While we were doing that, we were walking around taking photographs, and let me show you what we captured. Now this first picture you're going to see is going to be right here in this area of the elevator. We would have nothing in the photograph, and then a blue light would appear in the photograph. Then again, nothing, repeatedly, picture after picture, nothing. And then a type of blue light would be there. There is no light in this. If you're here in the evening, it's very dark. There's no light coming through. This kept happening, and at the same time, also our K2 meter was going off at the same time we were having this happen. I then decided to step out here and start panning photographs around the room. And as you can see, this pole right here behind you, the blue light transfers to the pole behind you. And we end up capturing it on the pole there behind you. Another thing that's interesting is that as we were doing this, we have a camera that can take pictures of cold and hot spots. And we were tracking a cold spot. Again, right here where you're standing, it would get really cold. But as we traveled through the room, the cold spot would travel with us. And we would get hits on our K2 meter as we were traveling through the room. So it was a really interesting experience for us. You're actually welcome to wander around now. We've had people on the tour take pictures in the elevator and also capture the blue light. So you're welcome to wander around, look out the windows. We'll take just a minute to let you feel out the space.
Yeah, what a great view up here. It needs to
Shows the group. That is a good one. This is kind of nice tone dark.
Okay, if you want to head towards the stairs. Okay, so welcome to the clock tower. This is the highest and newest part of the building. It's also where we get the stories of what we might consider hauntings. There's stories of somebody walking up and down in the stairwell when there's no one here. Also stories of the lady in white or a lady in white. Now we have heard a lot of stories about the lady in white over the years. I like to think of it, is it a lady in white or is the lady made of light? And so that's kind of something to think about when you're hearing some of these stories. It's kind of a cool thing. People ask us, well, why would this part have activity if it's the newest part? Now there's a lot of theories behind that we can talk about. It could be because it's the highest part of the building, could have something to do with the tower or the clocks themselves. So there's a lot of things that we could document and talk about as why someone would be in this space. One of the cool things about this tower up here is eventually it will chime. Does anybody know what it will chime? This is dawn, so it will be toilets flushing. Eventually it will flush on the hour. So there's a sense of humor for you. Some other cool things that we like to document when we are doing investigation is smells. Now smells can be lots of for different reasons. Some of the buildings that we go into have residual smells that stay with the building or smells that come up. And so we like to document those kind of things. But I'm going to let you experience that in this building. We're going to go back down and onto the 4th floor, and I'll let you smell that for yourself. Great, I think we got everybody. Okay, so welcome to the 4th floor. At one time, this building was actually a creamery. So there was a lot of creamery kind of things going out. They actually brought out 250,000 pounds of cheese out of this building. So a lot of cheese came out of here. That's the smell that you can still smell on this floor. Eventually this floor will become a wedding hall where you can have receptions, things like that. The floor underneath us is also in process, and it will become the Museum of Clean Bodies. So there'll be medical things, dental things like that that you can come and look through on that floor. So as you can see, this is a work in progress. There's a lot of still things going on with this building. When we did our investigation, we had no activity on this floor at all. We had nothing happen on this floor other than the smell. So hopefully if you have a reception here, it doesn't smell like this. We're actually going to go downstairs and then onto the roof.
I know. Oh, there's that little ball.
The roof. This is the other area that we had a lot of activity on the night of our investigation, and particularly right in this area. The interesting thing is that it wasn't close to the ground. It was right up here around this area. When we would ask questions, again, we were getting a lot of K2 hits. We also took pictures of the clock tower and had orbs going around our clock tower, and saw shadows here in the elevator shaft. And we actually had shadows come through on the night of our tour. These upper floors are a no access for people to be in, so there should be nobody walking around in those areas. So that's kind of an interesting thing. The plans for this, it will be the roof garden that Dawn was talking about. This is where the roof garden will be. And you'll be able to come out here, have a picnic, eat some lunch, do that kind of thing, or just relax and enjoy the space. So it's a pretty cool thing, and he has a lot of plans for this building. We're actually going to walk back inside. We're only 2 floors up now, so if you'd like to use the stairs, you can. If not, the elevator is right inside the door. So please come back when you can kind of mosey around and take a look around. There's a lot of cool things. This actually concludes this part of the tour, and I'm going to turn you back over to Stephanie.
What day is the museum?
I think the museum is open Tuesday through Saturday.
Okay, so I'm going to walk you across the street to our next stop. Now, I'm going to teach you one thing as we go down here, and that's how to jaywalk. So if you haven't known how to do that, I'm going to teach you how. There are not crosswalks down here. So please be very careful. Sometimes cars in Pocatello, actually it's not the cars, it's the drivers, don't stop for pedestrians. So although we're going to be in the street, if a car looks like it's not going to stop, why don't you stop? Because we've not lost anyone on a tour and would not like today to be the first time. Okay? We're going to walk over to the old AMI storage building located at 701 South 1st Avenue. We are going to stop on the corner for just a moment and look down at the brewery. It's Pocatello's first and local brewery, so we're going to point that out, and I'm going to give you a little bit of history and statistics about the warehouse district, and we'll let you walk through the next building. So follow me, please.